you know what, I bet you I did. Right above the bottom orange highlighted section, there's one yellow that's not stricken through on stage. And I don't think that I captured that when I highlighted it, because I was like, I looked at it again. So I messed up. I didn't have, there's one other address on stage, but I'll get it here. So when I highlighted those, I didn't capture that little one top yellow one.
Okay.
So everything that's completed should be stricken through and then have
Okay.
a mark.
That's good. That's good
I
idea.
don't know how to count maybe, so that's,
No, you don't.
it's not one of my
Orange, yellow, orange, yellow.
Right, I was just doing coloring.
I know,
Not really
orange, yellow,
counting.
orange, yellow.
You studied
I
coloring, is that
said
what
I put 2021 in a different sheet.
That's
So
my
now I
kind of
gotta
class.
move your non-strict through one over to the right column.
Yeah,
And then
I started typing with Liz.
you already have one.
Well, I know I have Liz, yeah. I was.
Hope you're not colorblind. You studied coloring, I hope you're not colorblind. A lot of guys are.
It's when you start talking about mauve.
I don't know all those. I don't know.
Recording in progress.
You know, magenta. I have to,
Yeah. That's mauve.
yeah. I enlist my 7-year-old. She's very good at colors.
So I bought the big, like 64 crayon thing. And redo all the colors. Well, it's coloring.
I'm cold, it just take, it might,
Yeah, what my, like,
might not download it in time.
got my
so
ice
that-
cream covered, got water. That's where it's at. Still waiting to the ice cream.
Dang it.
You're getting closer.
Okay.
One step.
I have the other one.
Yeah, so that works. It was just because of the commercials, I said there was two.
I just, on mine, I think.
Yeah, that's the better thing to have.
You put a lot more pictures back.
All the committee members, they were all there. They all sketched up something. I'm just a sub-consultant on that one. I did it conceptual stuff for 2 years ago. Kind of narrowed it down to the 12th Street area.
One relief.
You talking about the underpass?
But now, yeah. Yeah. Did you watch any of the meeting? It was, it's about what you'd expect, you know. There was 20 people in the room and there was 20 different ideas of what exactly it should look like and where it should come out. And multimodal people and Parks and Rec people.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, he wasn't there though. So I would imagine he would have been if he could have been.
Cool.
They just asked me to be on their team. Yeah, yeah.
Holy packet. I was like, I skipped through all the soil stuff. I was like, I have no idea what.
Damn it, Brian.
Fancy. Fancy.
Come on, don't you like those things? You want everybody to know who you are?
I have a couple of them.
A few, here and there.
A few. Yeah, I think that clock's fast too.
Yeah, it is.
Oh,
Right now,
my.
6:30.
Oh, are we on? Thanks.
Come on.
This down.
They give us water now.
Yeah, it's in our rider. Have water and green M&Ms only.
Where's the candy
I
though?
know. We used to get hooked up.
I'll hit her up tonight. You good? All right, I'll call this meeting to order at 6:30 precisely. Roll call, please.
Vice Chairperson Gadd,
Here.
Commissioner Nelson,
Here?
Commissioner O'Shea Heidinger, Trustee Politis,
Here.
Mayor Tarkington,
Here.
Chairperson Nyberg.
Here.
5 present, 1 absent.
Thank you. If everyone would stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, guys. All right, I'm going to go to 1D, general public input, limited to 10 minutes. Can I have my first speaker?
along with numerous proposed developments that are beginning the approval process. And we have a newly hired community planning director. Pretty dynamic situation. I've met with Ms. Killian and was pleased to learn of her depth and breadth of community development, which is awesome. But because of these noted facts, there are concerns that the review and approval process for these developments could lack the depth of review, recommendation, and guidance for the developer that will best benefit Bayfield. There are many aspects that will require not just accepting the proposed development's reports, such as soil, traffic, water resource, future town impacts, and cost, to name a few, but also asking the right questions and seeking the best solutions. I'd like to suggest that the review process is paced in a manner to ensure that a thorough review is applied and the existing members lead in a manner to ask the right questions, utilize the community director's knowledge and experience in a manner that due diligence is applied to approving these proposed developments. I've submitted a letter to you along with examples of what I'm referring to as recommended by the American Planning Association. I hope that you will review the information and continue a discussion that what requirements are needed to be applied to the proposed developments are in fact reviewed and approved and to improve our town of Bayfield. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Evening, Brian Blanchard, 627 Louisiana Drive. I want to touch on Mustang Crossing just for a moment. Been reading through the land use code and the documents that are in our town. And I know we've gone back and forth on Mustang and they've made some concessions, not enough in my opinion. I think we need more park and open space. There are two sides of the development that had to be left as open space no matter what. I'm hoping that the Planning Commission and the board is aware of that. They've really only added one section of what I would call new open space. So I would hope to see more open space and more park and more connectivity. Having said that, I would hope that you are all aware of the 600-foot rule. Does that ring a bell with you all? I know I can't ask questions, but there is a rule in your land use code under section 5-2 that states if any development runs up to and in excess of 600 feet in length without a break, that you need to add a walkway or a thoroughfare. This is primarily for the kids and everybody, but it's mainly for the kids so they don't have to walk on that street all the way down to get through and onto some sort of other sidewalk. If you look at the Mustang Crossing proposed sketch plan, and you look at the center part of this, there is absolutely no break. And it goes for over 1,300 feet with no break. So it's more than twice what you recommend in your own land use code 5-2. So I am suggesting that you go back, look at that, and have them add a pass-through for the safety of the community, especially the kids. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. Mike Deming, 2049 County Road 526. Here to ask some questions about the Bayfield East annexation. I'm not here to stop the annexation, but the drainage out of that development will impact my property, Heidi Holly's property, and Chuck Jensen's property. The went through this before, when they wanted to develop up there before, and I was told by a city manager 2 or 3 floor back that if I didn't like it, they were just gonna go ahead and condemn my property. That'll be a problem. My questions basically have to do with problems I had when they built the Sunrise subdivision and the drainage that impacted my property. They had to rebuild it 3 times to get it right, and it's still not right. The main problem with the new development is it's gonna run a lot of water off of with grassland now. It's gonna increase the flows down through Heidi Holly's property, my property, and Chuck's property. And what I'm asking is, I wanna see some detailed engineering on how they propose to do that, and a good review of the engineering that's done, because last time the engineering was no good. There's also a ditch that isn't mentioned in the plan, and it's the Schroeder lateral C, which goes through my property, Holly's property, through the highway, north of 160 and back through. It's a cycle. So I'd like to see how they're gonna plan on dealing with that. But I'm particularly interested in how they're gonna take care of the flows that come down our draw, because it goes right through my property, which is all grassland and road in now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other general public input? Oh, sorry, ma'am.
Comments to make about the east annex.
State your name.
I do that now, Heidi Holly,
Okay, and your address, please.
2179 County Road 526, Bayfield. Should I go ahead and, see, I need to probably use I need a map up there, but on some of these papers that we got with the maps and the irrigation ditches on them, ours wasn't even on there. And ours is in direct, it's directly in the zone of where they're gonna build these 318 high-density lots. So, I guess what I'm thinking I need to know, does the property, I think the property that they're thinking about developing that way, it's like, I have a draw that comes through here and hits Highway 160 going east. Okay, so right across the highway, which is where I think this 318 lots are gonna be developed, right against the highway, the land slopes down from each side, east and west, and comes right into this draw, which there's a big culvert there, a big culvert, you can walk through it, that takes that water and sends it down onto me and Mike Deming and Chuck Jensen, and then it goes into Beaver Creek. So what I'm thinking is I need to know how are they gonna flatten the land out? Are they gonna keep the topography like it is? Because, you know, I'm really concerned about drainage, and I'm like Mike, I live right next to Mike, and we went through the Sunrise Estates drainage issues. Nobody, you know, was taking care of it. I don't know if you guys could tell me the last time they cleaned out that sediment pit. Does anybody know? Because I think the city took that over. Could be wrong about that, but so it's like those kind of things, you know, when you're proposing some new deal for us, are a concern. It's like, yeah, you know, you guys approve it and then shove it off on the homeowners and they don't wanna do it. And so here we are, we're stuck with a bunch of drainage. We don't know what's in that water, our stock drinks it, you know, it runs across our fields, that sort of thing. So we have concerns about, you know, the pits, maybe they work if they're maintained, but no one maintains them, and it's like, that's like kind of our issue, that, you know, Mike and I both feel like, you know, we've had experience already with subdivisions and high-density places, and yeah, the engineers designed these really nice pits, they're supposed to catch the water and the sediments drain out and then the overflow runs across and it's pretty clean and all this stuff. But if they're not maintained, and I've seen that one in Sunrise Estates, there's no place for the sediment to go because sometimes the silt is right up to where the culvert is. So the water runs in and it runs right out and it comes on to us. And that's my concern with this other thing, which, I'm against, I guess, until I see how they're gonna handle the wastewater. I mean, 318 lots with people living in them with kids and dogs and trucks and cars and all that stuff. And it's gonna be all concrete and roofs and stuff like that. Where's the water gonna go? It's gonna go right down my draw.
Well, one thing I would like to let you be assured of is we currently have other drainage issues in town, and we want to make sure that you don't have the same issue. Currently in Dove Ranch, they have an issue with the drainage water, and that should be a learning lesson for the town and the developer there. And so moving forward, we don't want to have that same problem in any other development that the planning comes before the planning commission, or I think even before the town, because we understand where you're coming from and we want to prevent that. And especially with that water going into the ditch, then that perpetuates a bigger problem because then that's going down further. And so we need to address that up front and early. So I want to let you guys know that we are aware of that problem and we're going to make sure we don't have that problem, because I am aware of the drainage issues in Sunrise Estates and with the retention pond at the very end that has blown out and they've had to fix in the past. So we're currently working on those issues. It's not a perfect science, but we're getting better. So I thank you for your input and for the gentleman too. So to let you know that we're working on these drainage issues, and because they're a problem to the town in general.
And so I can't ask you a question?
We're taking your questions down, we're recording them, and then we'll get back to you on emails.
So I can ask you a question?
It'll be on record.
Okay. Let's see, well, I was just thinking,
Wait, could you move up a little closer because you're being
Oh, I'm
recorded?
sorry.
Yeah.
how can and when, I see that we have one more meeting, is that right, for this consideration of the Bayfield East annexation?
It's kind of a long process,
We're at a lot more
so
meetings.
yeah, we're only in the developmental stages of it. And so the more meetings that you can attend and give your input, the better it is.
Well, I'm just saying that I got paperwork that said we were gonna have 4 meetings. I missed the first one, and so to me, all the paperwork that I have says that there was 4 meetings. And so I guess what you guys are telling me is there's gonna be a whole bunch more?
There,
Nicole can,
Yeah, so the initial notice was for the comp plan amendment and the annexation. That's bringing the land into the town limits. And then they have a 3-step process. They go through a sketch plan, which is a conceptual. And then at the preliminary plan level is where you get into more of the detailed engineering. And then they have a final plan level. So they have 3 more meetings at the Board of Trustees after the one next week. So, and then they have 2 more meetings at the Planning Commission. So after this one, they're gonna come back here 2 more times. So, and you'll
when
get
is the
re-noticed.
annexation, that's what I'm thinking, is
Well,
like,
just, let me add something real quick, because this is a hearing. There's a hearing item on this annexation where I'll give a presentation and kind of walk through maybe even some of the things you're asking right now. And then we do open it again for public testimony when we hear that item. So some of the stuff you might get some answers to as
Okay.
you hear the presentation, and then you'll be able to ask some questions again after that presentation.
okay, that's fair enough. All right, thank you for your time.
thank you, ma'am. All right, moving on. Does the planning commission have any conflicts of interest? Mr. Gadd?
No.
All right, just check. All right, moving forward, looking for approval of the agenda.
I would make a motion to approve the agenda as posted.
I second it.
I have a second. Roll call, please.
Vice Chairperson Gadd,
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Shea Heidinger,
Yes.
Trustee Politis,
Yes.
Mayor Tarkington,
Yes.
Chairperson Nyberg.
Yes.
All in favor.
All right, moving on to item number 2, the public hearing. And it is on 2022-03, the Martin Village PUD, Marlin Village PUD sketch plan.
So this is, as you said, the sketch plan for the Marlin Village, tiny home village. This has been through the process, they're at the sketch plan level, but it actually came through a comp plan amendment process as well as an annexation recently. So just to orient you, this property is located just west of here along Bayfield Parkway. On the other side, we have the Los Feliz River. As I said, they went through the comp plan amendment process back in last April of 2021. These properties were annexed into the town on December 21st to the Board of Trustees. And so they are in front of you tonight for their sketch plan review. They'll be in front of the Board of Trustees next week. Just remember. They'll be in front of the Board of Trustees on March 15th, next Tuesday. And they also have 2 more steps in the process, so they'll be back in front of Planning Commission for preliminary plan, and then final plan only goes to the Board of Trustees. So they'll be back in front of you one more time. And I won't go through this in detail, but really the difference there at the sketch plan level is it's still conceptual. What we do is we review it to make sure that it's a possibility to do the type of uses that they want to do on that property. And then when they get to the preliminary plan level, that's where we really get into the technical documents and technical reviews. We get the engineering plans so that we can make sure that it actually does work on that property. And then the final plan stage is just wrapping everything up if there's any additional information we need before we issue final approval. So they still have 2 more steps in the process after this one. Just the project proposal, it's a 15-space tiny home on Wills Village. The property will remain under the head's ownership, and so they do want the tiny homes to be owner-occupied, but those units will be owner-occupied, but they're going to be renting spaces from the current property owner. So they will not be subdividing this property. It'll stay as one ownership. They're looking at 40-foot by 25-foot spaces for each tiny home. They're also going to be providing some covered storage for the tiny homes. They're going to require skirting around the tiny homes. Each tiny home space will have 2 parking spaces each, and they'll have 5 additional guest parking spaces. They're proposing to do xeriscape for their landscaping with some shade and fruit trees. They're proposing an approximately 1,000 square foot community garden for the residents, as well as a pavilion with tables and grills. This is just an overall site plan that just shows the individual spaces that will be created for the tiny homes. And then this is a nice 3D rendering that gives you an idea of how those tiny homes will be laid out on the property. And so, again, this is the sketch plan phase, conceptual level, and there's 3 possible actions for the Planning Commission tonight, and that'd be recommend approval, recommend denial, or recommend continuance with direction to staff and the applicant. I'm happy to answer any questions you have of staff, and I know the applicants are here and would like to present as well.
I guess I have a question. How many sewer taps?
So there's one sewer main that will come into the property, and then if they want to do individual metering, they would do that on the other side of our meter. Correct, Jeremy?
And their entrance and exit off of the parkway,
Yes.
is it off the county road and then off of the parkway?
So they're proposing 2 access points. One would be off County Road 509, and then one would be off Bayfield Parkway.
And that doesn't require a turn lane or anything like that?
According to the traffic analysis that's been currently provided, no, but they do need to get a permit from the county for the access off of Bayfield Parkway.
Can you go back to the 3D rendering,
Yes.
please? Okay. So that's it's Parkway right there. The Parkway goes right there.
Yes, that's
And then this is the county road over here.
509.
And the river runs kind of right behind it. And isn't that the floodplain that goes right behind them? Okay.
Yes, there's a drop there. So they're only using about half of their property for this.
And then the over here is where they have the community garden.
Yeah, you can see them.
So then, this is the fun one. The dumpster's going to be off of the county road.
That's what their proposal is right now.
I just had to throw that in.
Valid point. Any other questions from the board?
It's good.
This one's good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, my name's Steve Pavlik. I'm with PST Engineering, 3520 Bennett Street, Durango, Colorado. We don't have a formal presentation. I knew Nicole was going to put together slides and whatnot and kind of give a description of the project, but I did want to let you know that I'm here to answer any technical questions, and the heads are, Linda and Mark Head are both here, property owners, to answer any questions that I can.
Board have any questions?
I do not.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else for the public hearing for the Marlins Village? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to 2B, 2022-1 Orchard PUD preliminary plan.
Let me share my screen again. So this is for the orchard, and this is a planning development as well, but they're at the preliminary plan stage. So this is where we did get into more of our technical review. Just to orient you, this site is a 1 acre site located on the corner of Clover Drive and Orchard Drive, just north of the Clover Meadows subdivision. They went through, so this has been annexed into the city for quite a while now, so they did not need to go through that process. But they went through sketch plan process in October of last year, and so they are in front of you tonight for their preliminary plan review, and then they will only have the final plan left. Again, I won't read through this in detail, but this is just
it gives you an idea of what's required for preliminary and final. And again, preliminary is when we get into the technical review. And then you'll see there's a lot of conditions of approval of things that we still need more information on that we will get at the final plan. And that's where they refine everything before we finalize this would have a subdivision plat. And so before we finalize all of that at the next stage. This project is a 14-unit plan development. I believe there's been some changes to this, and I'll let the applicants correct me, but I think the 4 duplex lots are now becoming single-family, so this will actually have 9 single-family lots and 5 townhomes. Is that correct? Okay. The unit sizes range from 1,100 square feet to 1,500 square feet. They are going to be putting in a private road just because of the small site and wanting to do a higher density, something more unique. They cannot fit a standard city street into that space, so that's going to be a private road that's going to be maintained by an association. And so the association is going to be responsible for road maintenance, their drainage and detention areas, guest parking, and common areas. So again, a little bit different than what we've normally seen in Bayfield, but they'll have access off of Clover Drive and Orchard. You can see the townhomes are going to be on that northwest side of the property, and then the rest will be single family. This is just showing the lots, layouts from the plat. With the townhomes, they have to get their building permit first and actually start constructing those before they can plat those, and that's called an as-built plat, so that will come through the process after they've started construction on those 5 units. I did want to point this out because we've had some discussions with the applicants, and they're of the thought that they shouldn't need to put in sidewalks on Clover and Orchard. The land use code does require sidewalks, and the reason why they have that thought, and they can kind of get into more detail as well, but I'm going to go back to, this is a good one. There's a gap, actually this is not as good. So there's a gap in sidewalk but, north of Lupine, but the rest of Clover Meadows to the east all has sidewalks. And then all along Clover on the east side of Clover, all the way down to Louisiana Drive, where T intersects there, has sidewalks. And so talking with Public Works Director, you know, at some point the city will have to come back through and put in that sidewalk between Lupine and this property. So we'll be putting that in our work plan so that we have that continuous sidewalk. And so this is just showing some of the images of the sidewalk. You can see on Lupine, the corner of Lupine Clover where it ends, but you can see also Lupine does have sidewalks, attached sidewalks, and then this is from the detention of Clover Phase 7 looking north all the way up Clover. You can see the sidewalk goes all the way up until this point on Lupine and Clover. So, and then also, I'm going to go back a couple slides. Clover Meadows Phase 7 will also wrap around from Sunflower into Orchard, and we're going to require sidewalks along that edge too. So there'll be sidewalks east of this project as well. So again, possible motions, approval. There are conditions and findings in the staff packet, or denial or continuance with direction to staff and the applicant. And I can answer any questions that you may have of staff right now. And I know the applicants do have a PowerPoint too that I'll be prepared to share in a second.
Does the board have any questions?
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and share their PowerPoint if Ian or Andrew, if you guys are ready.
I'm Andrew Platts, and my address is 58 Tanglewood Drive.
You can just tell me when you want me to change the
Sure,
slide.
yeah, just go ahead and start. I was just gonna try to reorient you from the last time we were here real quick. She did a lot of it, so we'll just blow through a bunch of slides because we don't need to do it again. Again, you know where the project is, so we can skip this one and this one. This property is zoned multifamily, allows for single-family duplex townhomes and apartments. The density that it's currently zoned for is up to 22 units per acre. So we're proposing 14. And Nicole was right, we changed the duplex units on this property to single-family homes, primarily because we figured we could fit those on there, and it's just kind of a more desirable product to have your own home detached. So we thought that would fit there. So we're almost half what you currently have it zoned in terms of for density. So we can do the next one. We just covered this. She showed you that as well, just kind of gives you a feel for it. Every unit will have 2 parking spaces, and in addition to that, we've got 3 to 4 or as many guest parking spaces as we can get in there. So we can go to the next one. Again, that's the plat. Tract A is where the detention pond area is, and one of the things that came up in the last meeting was snow storage, which I think is a legitimate point. So we talked with the engineer extensively about that, just to kind of answer you. I think there's plenty of adequate snow storage for whatever comes off the road on that Tract A, which is the appropriate place to put it anyway, so that it drains correctly. And then, of course, on those lots, the driveways, they can store the snow in their yards like everybody does at all of our own houses. So that's basically the layout. And we can come back to that if you want to. This is not our project, but this is just kind of representative of the type of project that we're doing here. You know, they're smaller homes. We can go to the next slide. Townhomes like this, and the next slide. This is an actual kind of elevation of our architecture for these houses. So they're a 25-foot wide 2-story unit. We can go to the next slide. And the reason we're doing this is, I don't need to tell you guys this, but obviously, the town's got 1,000 housing units. You need to add 50 units per year for the comprehensive plan. You've only got so many vacant platted lots. I know those are going up right now with these other projects that you've got coming through. But there's a lot of young people that need homes, and the product that we're providing here is probably going to be at the bottom of the market in terms of cost. This is going to probably be the least expensive new home product in Bayfield, which is that's kind of what we build, and that's what we're trying to replicate here in Bayfield. So that's our anticipation. We don't need to spend a ton of time on this. The planning objectives, last time we reviewed the comp plan, we know that that's supported by the comp plan. The next slide, I think, after, so we can go 1, 2, next slide, another slide. We've submitted all the engineering documents for this. They've been reviewed. I think everybody is fine with all the elements of those, the road, the drainage, et cetera. Of course, we know that there's water and sewer available. We also have the utility plans from Black Hills, LPA, cable company. Yeah, so we know there's some issues with that, so we're trying to fish around to provide the best. We're trying to figure out what the best internet service that we can install on this property is.
Let us know when you find out.
Yeah, it seems to be the consensus, but we have a plan nonetheless. So the next slide, I think, is really the last thing is traffic. That's just an issue when you're putting 14 units. This is really an infill project in Bayfield. Clearly, it's not on the fringes. It's right in Bayfield. We did our transportation engineers analysis. It's going to produce about half as much traffic as it would if it was built out to its existing zoning of 22 units per acre. I think before we got this project, it was under contract with some guys that were wanted to put a 22-unit apartment complex on the property, was my understanding. So it'll be this acre of land will produce a comparable amount of traffic to the other commercial and industrial uses that surround it, like the manor and the electric shop and the county yard and all that stuff. So we're not anticipating, all the analysis. It's a fairly normal amount of traffic.
Where's the I didn't see the parking. I'm sorry. Can you go back and show me the parking?
Yeah, go back to the
for
colored
the
slide.
townhomes.
Yeah, go to back to the colored slide is probably the easiest one to see that on. Yeah, this is not. Can I walk away?
Sure.
You can hold this like you're a superstar.
So this is not exactly how this is going to be configured because this is an older drawing compared to the plat. But essentially, there's going to be a couple of guest parking spaces down here. All the townhome units are going to have garages as well as parking spaces next to them. It's not going to be lined up exactly like that. And then these driveways are going to be deep enough, and then a garage as well.
Are they garages or are they just covered?
Garages.
Okay.
Yeah, full garages.
Are they one car or two car?
One car. We're gonna make them as big as we can make them because people love garages.
Yeah.
Obviously, can't get enough garages in Colorado, so.
There's a reason.
Yeah. I mean, we've even talked about, making a part of this project to do small, like, storage sheds in the backyard. People just have so much stuff. So that's just something we notice when people come to buy our houses. They want lots of storage, including
And
parking.
what is the general square footage of your houses?
The townhomes will probably be around 1,100 to 1,300 square feet. We just have what's the plan right now?
The initial plan is 1690, but I think it's going to be a little smaller.
For the single-family home, it's probably 1,500 along that right side, and then along the bottom there, they're going to be a little bit smaller. So maybe those would be 1,400 and 1,500, and then smaller for the townhomes. So, these are mansions, these are just homes to get going in. Let's see, where were we? I think we were past this a little bit. And one more. Oh, so, just, again, this is an infill project. We think it makes sense from a transition standpoint. You've got these industrial uses over here, and then we're gonna have some townhomes, and then we've got single-family homes, and then it transitions into Clover Meadows, which is kind of a more bigger homes, bigger lots. So it seems like a logical progression through there. And it's affordable. That's kind of our model. So I just wanted to be clear about, this is my last slide, but I just wanted to be clear about a couple of things. One is, the reason that we're doing a PUD is because we're actually, what your zone, we almost fit into your existing zoning on this project. But to get those houses, that many houses on there, which of course allows us to sell the houses for less because you've got more lots on there. We had to move the setbacks a little bit. So really we're asking for a couple of feet of setback changes on the sides of the homes. And I think in the planning packet, we're not really asking for setbacks per se, but we're saying let's do a minimum of about 9 feet between the homes. Because the way that those lots are configured, we originally were asking you for 0 lot line homes. We've taken another look at that. We've been able to, I don't get in the weeds, but some of the homes will sit closer to the lot lines and some of them will sit slightly farther away. This is just the jigsaw puzzle of fitting the things on here. But the bottom line is all the houses are going to be at minimum 8 foot apart. And then on that southern part of the lot, we had to scoot the houses back a little bit so we could accommodate the parking, et cetera. So we asked for a setback adjustment there. So the point of me saying all that is just that we almost, we probably would have asked for a variance to do this, but our first meeting, people were like, no way. So that's fine. So that's all we're really asking for in this meeting. With this project. The second thing is wait, there's something the sidewalks. Let's hit that real quick. The sidewalks, we're looking at that, and it's what's going to happen when we look at that. So there's no sidewalks on either side of the street, on the other side of Clover, across the street from this project, and there's no sidewalks all the way north to, for all the blocks all the way up there. So, and to the south, there's 2 stretches of sidewalks on the Clover Meadows side of the thing. So what you're going to have is you're going to have a weird stretch of sidewalk that goes into a dirt road to nowhere in the lot with Clover Meadows there. When is that going to get built out? I have no idea. And then you have a disconnected sidewalk on this side of the street and nothing on the other side. From my perspective, it's like building sidewalks to nowhere kind of is an expense that becomes a maintenance issue for the town with not a huge benefit unless they're really going to get sidewalks built in the future. So I'd almost propose that you do something else than just create a maintenance, weird sidewalk to nowhere and create a maintenance issues, like maybe take a fee in lieu of that or something along those lines. But that's our perspective, is it doesn't make much sense. And, you know, you can see this probably all over the town of Bayfield. It's everywhere in Durango where there's just weird random sections of sidewalks on roads that are crumbling and, you know, not getting utilized. So that was our position on that. When we started this project in October, when we were talking to the town and the former planner, we were hoping that we could get this project started in April. And then what happened was the planners changed and so we got set back a month there. And we also had some new things come on the table, like the PUD agreement and stuff like that. I just make an appeal to you regarding this, and we've been negotiating this back and forth with Nicole with regard to the PUD agreement and subdivision improvements agreement and all these things. You know, we were kind of told that we were the first in on this. We're kind of the guinea pig for this type of project. Because you have these other large projects. My only appeal to you would be is just consider that we are not, you know, this is a 1 acre, 14 unit project. And maybe the PUD agreements and subdivisions agreements that would apply to large annexations, 80 to 100 units that are, you know, way more complicated than ours. It's maybe not a one size fits all, that a PUD agreement that works for them is a PUD agreement that works for us. Like this type of project, it might be smarter to do something simpler and more expedient. So one of the things that we're hoping for, and you know, I don't know if this is possible or not, but we you know, Katie and the former planner told us that we could possibly combine the preliminary and final plat meetings due to the nature of this project. And I don't know if that's possible, but I think we've got everything substantive done. There's a few small details that need to be worked out with this PUD agreement, but all the engineering has been done and looked at. You know, the utility plans are there. I think we just have most of this stuff, so I'm just making, you know, I don't know if I'm going to get anywhere with this, but it's just an appeal that maybe we could speed this process up a little bit, just so that we could get building in April, because as you know, construction's pretty time sensitive to get these products online. So that's my appeal, and that's all I've got for you guys.
I do have a question for you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. I had that same one.
I have a, do you have an idea of what you would propose instead of the sidewalk?
You mean in terms of?
You're asking us to back off on the sidewalk. I'm saying, can you give us an option here?
Gosh, I don't know. I wouldn't suggest to you like a dirt or gravel trail or anything like that, because those, I mean, those kind of have their own problem. Maybe you could. I mean, they have to be maintained, so we'd have to like make sure that got written into our association
Well,
documents.
would a gravel trail be better than a sidewalk? That's a question. I mean, because
Probably for the short term, it would make more sense. It's cost effective, you know, I just look at, so here's what happened, like, so in Durango, they had no sidewalks. There's a specific example that I'm thinking of in North Durango. And they had these piecemeal sidewalks, and the town came in and said, hey, we're gonna put sidewalks in, we're gonna do a special assessment. And I mean, the neighborhood had a riot, you know, because they were gonna assess every house $6,000 or $8,000 for the sidewalks. And I'm like, I feel like that could happen here as well. And so we just build a sidewalk, and it's not cheap. And that money gets transferred to the housing prices, obviously, and it's like, is that where we're going to spend the money? So a gravel trail, as long as it's maintained, is
that's
good.
the question, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, but so you have a private road that you're maintaining by the HOA, so now you're asking them to also maintain the gravel trail too?
Yes, I mean, that could be in addition to in the association documents, yeah. And you have to budget it. I mean, it requires annual maintenance. I live in a neighborhood that has a gravel trail. It's fine.
Well, I think there's a problem, because in any other development, and I'm going to use this one for example, the one down on South Street that Snooks put in, he had the same argument about the sidewalk being cut off, and we stood strong, and we require the sidewalks. If we have to come in and change them at a later point,
Doesn't look nice.
yeah. So that's one thing I'm not for the gravel trail. I'm more for setting that precedence. We've already held one developer accountable, so you shouldn't get that pass either. So, You know, that's kind of where I lie. I don't like the gravel trail. This is a time where people have disabilities, they need the sidewalks to walk on. I'm not okay with that. And that's just my personal point, so I would throw that out there.
In addition to the fact that you have schools in that area and having safe places for the young people, if we're marketing these homes to young people, they will probably have children that are probably walking to the local schools there. So I think for safety's sake, just putting it out there for sidewalks as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna fight hard for the sidewalk situation. I'm just wondering I know we're gonna be on the hook for filling in those gaps. I'm just kind of wondering what that looks like for the process for getting that done.
So we did budget money for 2022 for sidewalks. And the money that we budgeted would probably cover that span plus some other reviews that we're doing also down Mill Street.
So it's something that we could put in together to connect that. It's not gonna sit there
No,
piecemealed.
no.
I'm not gonna die on the hill of the sidewalks. It may make more sense just to pay a fee in lieu for the sidewalks if we come to an agreement what it costs, and then when you build it all as a piece, as opposed to having us, I mean, that may make some more sense, but I'm not gonna die on the hill. But yeah, we're more interested in just getting the project off the ground, and that's our primary interest, is trying to get something happening over there.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
Sure.
And I'd like to just add 2 things on the PUD and the subdivision agreement. The land use code does require a PUD guide. Because this is a planned development, this is negotiated zoning. And so the PUD guide is an agreement between the town and the developer that stays with the land and is recorded with the property, so that every property owner that purchases in there understands the requirements of the town versus the requirements of the developer, understands it has unique zoning. So when they complain that their house was only built 8 feet from their neighbors, we can show that this is why it was created that way. And so that becomes our land use code, a mini land use code for this development. So staff would not suggest a waiver of that code requirement. And then the subdivision agreement, this is where, this is really all the public improvements, so the sidewalk, sewer main that they're putting in the private road. This is where you provide a list of those with the cost estimates, and usually there's some sort of warranty surety that's in place that they have a certain period of time to install those public improvements to city standards, and then if they don't do that, we have the ability to pull, whether it's a bond or a letter of credit, and go in and finish those improvements. And so that's what that agreement is, again, required by the land use code, and staff would suggest not waiving those 2 requirements.
Yeah.
I just to be clear, we're not asking for a waiver of those. We were just asking for an acknowledgement that, you know, building what your future PUD is for our subdivision doesn't necessarily fit in a 35-acre subdivision. And second of all, there's only really the 2 public improvements on this project. Everything else is private. So it's the sewer main, which goes under the road. So that will be built, you know, because we're going to build the road first. So that will be installed. So that's the only public improvement there, in addition to the sidewalks.
And
which
curb and gutter.
It sounds like you guys.
Curb, gutter, sidewalks.
The engineering plans don't call for curb and gutter in this subdivision on the private road.
No, along Orchard and Clover, where you put the sidewalk in.
Right.
Mhm.
Well, there is already curb there, right?
Mm-mm.
There's not curb there?
I think so. No, there's not.
No, okay.
I would look to Jeremy.
No, you're right, there's not. Okay. I was thinking further south. Okay, I just want to clarify.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Can I ask a couple questions on the engineering drawings and the detention pond there on Lot A? It shows that outlet structure. I guess, where does that go? Is there a ditch that runs along the north side of Clover there? Where does that water end up?
Eventually goes into the city's storm drain system, but Jeremy might be able to answer that a little bit better than me.
So through that subdivision, there's a drain swale that kind of runs, I guess, to the east of that property outside of Tract A, and that runs all the way back down through Lupine Daylily, and then eventually connects with Clover 7 and goes into that detention pond that they installed with that subdivision.
Okay.
So it kind of runs in between those first two houses directly off Clover to the east.
Okay. And I guess kind of along that same little plot right there, I mean, it's a fairly small area. I mean, it's a smaller subdivision, but to the point that was made earlier about cleaning that out and maintaining that pond, I mean, that thing's small enough. You're not getting a piece of equipment in there to maintain it and clean it out in the future, I guess. What's the thought there? How would that happen?
For the developer.
And that would be privately maintained, so the town would not be going in and
So would
maintaining
the
it.
town have some enforcement then if they start seeing dirty water come out? to
We do,
enforce
so
the-
we have enforcement on all our developments. And I understand that maybe the public doesn't think they've all been enforced, but they are required to stay in perpetuity in working order. And so their HOAs would be required to maintain those, pay for someone to maintain those if they need maintenance. It's not the town's responsibility, but they are required as part of the developments in perpetuity.
Okay.
I mean, I can just speak to the engineering. It's designed for a 100-year rain event, and so it's not uncommon it's designed to withstand that. And then there's a weir in there so that it releases the water at the exact same pace that the water runs off the property naturally now. So everything is designed to maintain what the drainage and runoff on the property is currently. So it's designed not to exceed that even under a 100-year rain event, so, or a 100-year melt-off event. So it's bigger than you think. I agree you're not going to get a huge traco in there, but it's mostly a weir system that slows the water flow out of the detention pond. Because this piece of property, based on the engineering modeling that they did, and I'm not an engineer, actually has pretty low runoff, so as it is. So that answers your question.
I guess one more question maybe while you're up here. I think at sketch plan the thought was that the exit into Clover would be more of a emergency access gate and not truly an entrance exit onto Clover. And I guess I'm just wondering, with the proximity there to the intersection and the traffic that happens along Clover in the mornings and in the afternoons, especially once that area is developed further east, it seems like kind of a dirty intersection right there moving forward. And I guess why the change to keep that open access right there?
I guess I remember we had discussed this at the last meeting, and I think we originally had proposed it as either an egress only or an emergency access, but from that last meeting, the input was that, and I've been talking to Jeremy, and that there wouldn't be a problem to have ingress and egress along Clover there. So maybe we misunderstood that, or I think it would probably be better. You might actually reduce traffic if you have an entrance and two entrances and exits. Some people will choose one and some people will choose another, as opposed to focusing it all on one. So I don't know what the answer to that is, but.
Do you know what that distance is from,
You're going to the Orchard?
From Orchard to that entrance there?
Oh gosh, it's probably like 90 feet? Yeah, somewhere in there, 100 and something feet. 110
Okay.
feet.
Jeremy, you have any concerns with that?
If I'm not mistaken, that distance will be determined by the traffic speed on the road. And with the residential speed of the traffic, then you're basically just looking at that 15-foot clearance for your view triangle. And I also believe that was one of the comments from Upper Pine, was having that secondary access be available, whether it's emergency or full-time for EMS vehicles and fire.
Okay.
What's staff's feeling on an in lieu fee for those sidewalks?
That they're constructed by the developer.
So that's not something we want to consider, even though we have to build a section of it.
No, you have the primary school there in that location, and that sidewalk is, the sidewalk that is not on the development is, should be added anyway, regardless of whether this development is approved or not.
No,
So-
but I'm saying that there's going to be a sidewalk.
Yes.
It's just, we get the money to build it as a town, all in one.
That's correct.
One shot.
Yeah, and as those, keep in mind, right now, we have industrial development that's further north. At some point, there should be a sidewalk built. It may not be in 2022 or 2023, but at some point, there should be a sidewalk there.
So Katie, let me clarify, are you in favor of considering the in lieu of, that where the developer pays the town and the town holds that money until they build the sidewalk?
I think that's got to be in the agreement that they would have to bring to our attorney. So I don't have any issue with an agreement in lieu of, but I do believe that they should be responsible for the cost
Yeah.
of constructing the sidewalk.
I think there's a fee in lieu of at this point would be a bad idea for the town. I mean, what it's gonna cost a developer today to build it is just gonna keep going up. And so if the town waits 2 years, it's gonna cost double what it might cost today. So
Construction prices are going up or something?
that's a battle I fight every day.
Good points. Any other questions? Concerns? All right, we'll move on to 2C, 2021-12 Bayfield East annexation.
All right, let me share my screen again.
Can there not be public comment?
Yeah, there, yeah,
Oh.
you can go. There can be public.
Oh, yeah, you didn't do public.
Go for it.
Nice try there.
Brian Blanchard, 627 Louisiana Drive. So the developers seem like nice guys, but I think there's a bit of spinning going on here just from looking from the outside to the inside. And the reason I say that is you were just talking about sidewalks. That's one of the things that I noticed, that they're asking for a variance not to build any sidewalks. I think that's a huge mistake. I think that's why we have what he called weird little sections here and there. That's exactly what we want to get away from here. So do not let them off the hook for the sidewalks. You've got a busy school. I brought this up to Jeremy a few weeks ago about Clover. It's a rough section in there. It needs to be improved, and the developer should pay for their fair share of the section that they're going to make a ton of money on. So that's my feeling on that. Under the PUD, per the preliminary plan, section 3.5 of the Land Use Code states, the detailed review at this stage will help determine if the plan complies with zoning requirements, circulation patterns, and desired open space. As they are asking for a variance for installing sidewalks because they won't connect to an existing sidewalk system, this seems to be exactly what we should not be supporting going forward with this and any future development. We need more connectivity and circulation patterns, not less. There's also no open space or common area proposed in the project. They're asking for a variance about setbacks. From what I'm hearing, these houses are going to be 8 feet between them. That's about 8 feet. She reaches out, I reach out, we touch. So I would suggest and encourage the commission not to grant that variance. It's just too tight in there. And I know they want to squeeze in as much as they can. I understand that. It makes sense financially. But it's, again, not what we're really looking for as a town. And using the cost basis that it's going to be cheaper for the person to buy it, I don't really go for that. No open space or common areas proposed in the project. All current developments and all future developments should be required to provide some open space and or common area. Again, we're going in the wrong direction here by letting them not put any in. Traffic import report. The applicants have stated that the development will produce 9 trips per day during peak PM hours. 9 trips a day. You know what the average trip per day per household is? 10. There's 14 units in this development. That's 140 trips a day if you combine the entire day. They're saying 9 trips. That doesn't make sense to me.
Peak PM, that's peak PM.
Peak PM, but still
That
9.
means it's just a period of time at the peak hour, not the whole day,
Correct, but that's 9 trips.
during that 1 hour, peak hour. Usually
Okay.
it's about,
So it's broken down by the hour. So
This
we're,
one
we're
is,
looking at
yeah.
140 trips a day, basically.
so that, the peak is usually the highest travel time. So they're saying at their peak hour, the most traffic is 9, so the other hours probably be a little less than 9. Like between 10 and 11, there might be 2 trips. So 9 is the highest you'll see in 1 hour period of time.
But they're
Does that make
referencing
sense?
the peak hours.
Just the peak PM hour.
Correct, which is 5 to 7 or whatever it is, 5 to 8.
So there'll be about 9 trips during that time, but like I said, maybe between 10 and 11, there's only 2 trips. So it won't be 9 every hour. The highest hour will have 9 total. Does
Okay.
that make sense?
Yeah, but, okay, I'll let that go. But we're looking at 140 trips a day coming and going out of that subdivision. Street lighting, they're proposing no street lighting at all. Zoning review, under the PUD overlay district, is intended to preserve open space and to protect and enhance the environment. Land Use Code Section 5.8. The PUD design must take into account characteristics of the site in a manner intended to protect the health, safety, and welfare of potential users of the PUD and the community. No sidewalks, no open space, no parks, no connectivity, or streetlights does not meet the standards of Land Use Code Section 5.8. 5.8 further goes on to state that design and construction of the PUD will include adequate, safe, and convenient arrangements for pedestrian circulation. They have included none. Comprehensive Plan 4.3.4, Recommendation 4.3.4 states, prioritize land development applications that enhance the network of motorized and non-motorized connections throughout the town. They have provided none. In conclusion, I like the project for several reasons, including but not limited to the variety of the housing types, which they've cut back on. I do not like the project due to the comments provided above. I am hopeful that the Planning Commission and the Board of Trustees will agree that the development can and should be improved with specific direction to the developer. The town needs to start holding the developers to higher standards in all aspects of proposed projects to benefit not only the developer, but more importantly, the community. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for your discussion tonight and your questions. I appreciated that very much. I would agree with Mr. Blanchard. I think when it comes to these developments, it's important to cue in specifically on the development and understand the impacts, both improvements and negative impacts, but then to take it back out. How does it fit? How does it flow? How does it serve? The developer is saying, well, you know, this is just a small one, and you got these other big guys, and, you know, it's a different deal. Well, it's not a different deal. We are in the process of great growth. We could be under great growth. So how do we do that collectively from a vision that sees that? So I thought Mr. Blanchard did a really good job. I don't have to reiterate what he said, but I think it was very valuable.
I would also ask about these two detention ponds, the one that's related to this development and the one that it flows into. So, you know, you create all this surface where the water can flow. Snow goes, melts, that sort of thing. How does this one feed into the other? And how are they both built and supported in a way that you don't have issues with these detention ponds? I've heard several issues about that during several other meetings, that the detention ponds don't.
Retention ponds.
Retention ponds don't do what they're supposed to do in the manner that they're supposed to do it, because they weren't engineered correctly, and they weren't engineered with further or future developments impacting the flow of those ponds. So I'd encourage you to look at that again. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'm just wondering, does the developer have anything to say to those comments, especially the one about the lighting?
Again, at the last meeting, we did discuss lighting, and the consensus of the board during that meeting was that it wasn't required in there on a private road. Each of the homes themselves will have exterior lighting, both front and back. So I don't know, you know, it seems like towns are trying to reduce light pollution as much as anything. I know there's certain types of fixtures. Again, this is not something I'm gonna live and die on, is street lighting. It just, does it make sense in this development? Maybe, maybe not. I'm sorry, I can't remember. What were the other comments that you'd like me to reply to?
The retention ponds and the one next door, they're designed to
You gotta
Can you come?
Welcome to the podium.
the retention pond on our lot here is designed not to function with the next one. It collects all the water from our property and retains it there. They do not communicate to each other. Because that one is for a Clover Meadows pond. And so that one's, it hasn't been put in yet, and we don't know when it will get put in. But that entire east parcel is set aside for Clover Meadows drainage.
So are you guys looking to put that retention pond more towards the road like Clover Meadows, or is it gonna be?
It's in that far southeast corner, tract A.
That's the engineer's design, you know, and looking at the rain flow. So we didn't cook this up ourselves. And it's built for kind of extreme conditions. So on this particular lot, because it's so flat, I don't see there's not a lot of high-speed water runoff. So I don't see a lot of problems with the detention and drainage. But if you have specific questions, we can certainly take that back up with the engineer. But I'm sorry, I don't remember the gentleman's questions well enough to.
And open space, traffic, street lights, characteristics. I think you may have addressed some of the
I
other.
think the architecture on the project does fit well within Durango, into Bayfield. And you know, frankly, to build lower priced homes, you know, we're gonna be significantly lower priced than the Clover Meadows homes that are on close to, 10,000 to 14,000 square foot lots, or 8 to 14,000 square foot lots. Our lots are gonna be significantly smaller. Our houses are also gonna be smaller. They have smaller footprints. They cost less to build, et cetera. So this is not, this is just how we build. If you take a look at all the projects that we've ever built, it's this type of project, this type of house, and we've always been the lowest priced new home built in every market we built in. And so that's our business model. So that's what we're proposing to do here. So.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Any other public comments?
Brian Blanchard, 627 Louisiana Drive. I just have one follow-up kind of question for the developer, and that is the retention pond we're talking about. now I guess it's not going to connect to the other retention pond as an overflow. It's my understanding, reading through their proposal, that that will also be their snow collection site, because you're going to have quite a bit of snow coming off of this, and they're going to push that, try to push that into the Track A. So that's going to add to the amount of water that's in Track A from time to time all winter long. So it's not a very big area as it shows, and now we've got to also contend with that as storage for all the snow that's going to come out of this development, or it's going to end up in the public roadway.
Again, this is, I don't know if the gentleman's an engineer or not, a civil engineer, but this is the engineer's design, was to push the snow onto that. You gotta remember that even snow, even high density snow, is still about 80% air. And so every foot of snow equals about an inch, an inch of water. So pushing, while you may have big piles of snow there, it also melts relatively slowly. So it's not, this wasn't an afterthought, this was a design to push the snow there. It's actually much more effective than leaving the snow along the streets, letting it melt, collecting debris, and then flowing into the rear. It will result in less clogging, cleaning out of the thing. It just makes sense to put it on the detention pond. So.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? All right, seeing none, we'll move to 2C, 2021-12, Bayfield East annexation.
Alrighty. So this project is the annexation. It was just before you last month for the comprehensive plan amendment. Just to reorient you, it is north of the Highway 160 east and east of the town limits, so the northeast corner. 4 properties total are proposed to be annexed. Just kind of going back through the planning process to start with. So again, the comprehensive plan amendment occurred in January. The annexation is now in front of you. The next stage would be the sketch plan, which is the concept plan. Still talking with the development team on how they want to handle that, because there are 4 different properties and they are looking at phasing it. So they have options to either come to you with just a sketch plan of one phase, or bring the entire thing as a sketch plan and then to come individually for a preliminary plan by phases. And so I think that's yet to be determined by the development team. So I would say the next 3 phases of the project, or steps of the project, will be negotiated with the development team to determine how they want to proceed moving forward with the larger project. So the annexation process, we really do use Colorado Revised Statute Section 3112 to review an annexation. A couple things that I just wanted to point out is it's part of the Municipal Annexation Act of 1965. They have to have 1/6 of the property contiguous to town limits. Going back a slide or 2, as you can see, the northeast parcel is not connected to the town limits at all. And so this is called a series annexation. And so it can come in as one annexation, but the only way that northeast parcel can be annexed is if the other, really the one to the west of it, is annexed. So that creates its contiguousness, is that a word? To the town limits. That has to be capable of being integrated into the town as well as serviced by the town. It needs to be located within the 3-mile plan area. They needed to have submitted an annexation petition, which they did do. And there was a resolution by the Board of Trustees to accept that and to create the initial zoning. Proper public notice, which they did do. They also provided an annexation impact report. Hearings which are tonight and next Tuesday night with the Board of Trustees, need to be held and a decision needs to be made. And then they have to have an annexation plat, an ordinance, and an agreement recorded. So that's the annexation process we're going through. For this project, there are again 4 separate parcels, 153.51 acres total. They're proposing also a plan unit development. 2 existing gas wells are on 2 different properties, and so they will be required to go through the town review permit process. The Los Pinos ditch also runs through, if you recall, at the Planning Commission, we did have their representative and we did work on a condition, so we'll continue to move that condition forward until it's been met for the Los Pinos ditch. They're proposing 318 single-family lots, 200 multifamily units, which is a mixture of townhomes and multifamily. 245,000 square feet of general commercial, 110,000 square feet of mixed use, 110,000 square feet of grocery, and 100,000 square foot hotel. So the image to the left is their conceptual plan, and then the image to the right is what they're proposing to do for phasing. So that goes back to that discussion of when they want to submit their sketch plans and preliminary plans. They could either do them as a whole or come in as phases for those next stages in the process. And then again, your just proposed actions or recommended actions. There are conditions and findings if you do move forward with action A in the staff report as well. And then I know that, well, I can answer any questions if you have of staff, and then I know the applicant does have a presentation as
It
well.
was brought up that there's a Schroeder lateral in there.
I would need to defer to the applicants because I believe we've had that discussion. So.
Yeah, so I have a map that will show.
Do you want to go up?
Podium.
Oh, we can wait for your presentation if that'll clear it up.
Any other questions for staff? All right, share there. I'm getting confused with all these PowerPoints. Let me close mine. You can start talking, Andy. I'll find it.
All right. Well, hello again. Andy Arnold with SEH. I am an economic development planner that is working on the entitlement piece of this development. With me is Phil Rennick. He's our engineer on the project, and Derek McCoy. He is the representative to the developers. While Nicole gets this PDF up, I just want you to know that we have a number of slides on this. This is a very large project. I want to dive into kind of the goals behind the development, how it aligns with the comprehensive plan goals with the town of Bayfield. I'm going to go over our concept plan. I'm going to go over our phasing plan. And then a big part of this is going into what is the fiscal impact analysis, the fiscal impact to the town and the fiscal impact to the Bayfield School District. So we'll go over how we forecasted this development, what we're trying to do. And then finally, there will be a discussion about traffic impacts, what is currently happening with that traffic impact report. I'm happy to make a few comments regarding engineering plans, drainage, also plans regarding open space and parks. Again, I want to remind everyone that we're at the annexation phase with this, and the major concern for the town and for the Planning Commission tonight is how this annexed land is going to impact the town fiscally and more generally. Any luck with that PDF?
Yeah, it's pulling up here, but for some reason it's not showing on the screen. Did you see it, Katie? Was it sharing?
No, I don't see any sharing.
Can you see it now?
No, yep, no, it just came up.
See, it just doesn't want to show up here.
I can see it now.
You can see it? Okay. Let me see if for some reason it changed my screen. Might be at a loss.
It's online. Have to plug in.
Yeah. Well, this is running Zoom, but
Is there a way to pull the PDF up on the screen outside of Zoom?
see, it's not showing my screen. It looks like it's showing my screen, but it's not showing the screen that I have right here. That's the problem I'm having.
I saw your screen for a minute.
Well, it's showing it on Zoom, but not here.
Gotcha.
I might, I wonder if Katie can share her, if I email it to you, Katie?
Try it.
Okay. Did that go through?
Yeah, I just got it.
It's still not showing. Yeah, it's just not projecting up here.
Yeah, sorry, I thought a PDF would be a little easier. I wish I could say that this is going to be so entertaining, it's worth this
No,
wait.
I want to wait for the slideshow.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not.
You disconnect from the
Zoom?
display.
I can. And you can, we'll figure it out.
You're getting close.
some reason, I can't seem to get it back up on the screen.
Some people get their 12-year-old.
Stop share. We're there. Oh.
Hey.
Third time's the charm. Thank you, Katie.
Sure.
Thanks, Nicole. Sorry about that.
Maybe turn on your microphone, please.
Is my mic having the feedback?
No, go ahead.
No, good, we should be good now.
All right, and Nicole, I guess I'll just ask you to change the slides as we go through it, if that's all right. Oh, Katie, I'll ask you to change the slides as we go through it, if that's okay. All right, so this is actually just a recap of what Nicole put up on the staff report. It just shows the actions to date with this project. We originally submitted the majority of this material right before Christmas, and we were happy to wait until Nicole had the opportunity to review this for the town. We went through the Planning Commission comp plan amendment process on the 11th. That went to the Board of Trustees. Again, we started our notification on the 11th of February to the agencies. We did receive agency comment back at this time, and we started our surrounding landowner notification regarding this annexation on the 17th. Next slide, please. So I want to go over the goals that are really orienting this development. And so we're highlighting 3 recommendations that come from your 2018 comprehensive plan. These are paraphrasing those recommendations, but number 1, enhancing economic development opportunities. Specifically, it states incentivizing development in existing commerce areas. It talks about a couple commercial hubs, and one of those commercial hubs that is mentioned in your comprehensive plan is the intersection of Bayfield Parkway and US Highway 160, and talking about those northern areas above US Highway 160 being a great area for commercial development. The other goal is identifying land for employment and sales tax. That's going to be a big part of this development proposal, especially the early phases. This is going to be a development excuse me, that's going to bring about commercial development, going to bring about new commercial uses to the town that will generate sales tax. And finally, diversifying housing types. That was a stated goal in your comp plan. We've kind of heard about that theme today with some of the other developments that are being proposed. I'd like to show you how this development in this presentation is going to diversify the housing stock throughout Bayfield. Next slide, please. So for existing conditions, this is your comprehensive plan's future land use map. It might be hard to see, but the 4 parcels that are in question for the annexation are highlighted in blue and red. And the reason I highlighted that is the blue area, those kind of northern 3 parcels, we didn't ask to change that comprehensive plan designation at all. The uses that we're proposing are going to be residential. That's high density and medium density residential. You see it with the gray and the yellow. The red is highlighted because that is something that we changed during the comprehensive plan amendment. That light pink is a use for light industrial uses. We're not proposing any light industrial uses moving forward with this conceptual development plan. Rather, we'd like to have a mix of general commercial, mixed use, and higher density residential on that lower parcel. So that, fortunately, was those comprehensive plan amendments were adopted last month. And we can go to the next slide. So again, these existing conditions, we're showing you where these 4 parcels are. That blue is your future growth boundary for the town of Bayfield. The pink is your current city limits, and you can see that these parcels are on your northeast corner. Next slide, please. This map is showing your present water lines around the site. This is going to be, obviously, having central water and central sewer is going to be vital to this development. As you can see, these water lines surround the site. It'll be easy to extend these water lines throughout the site to facilitate development. Next slide, please. These are also the sewer lines. You can see that the sewer lines are below US Highway 160 and also throughout the Dove Ranch neighborhood. Again, we don't see this being or creating a challenge to extend those that infrastructure throughout the site. And then finally, this is a comment regarding the irrigation ditches. So this map is coming straight from La Plata County's GIS. The irrigation ditch that's running through the bottom south west corner of our site is the Los Pinos irrigation ditch. The Schroeder ditch is actually further west. I am not entirely sure where the lateral C ditch that was mentioned earlier tonight is running, but it's not showing up on the county's GIS. We do have annexation plats submitted as part of this proposal that will show all irrigation ditches running throughout. I'm not aware of the Schroeder ditch touching our development. All right, next slide, please, sorry. So for the conceptual development plan, what you see on your screen here is the entirety of this conceptual development that's being proposed. I should state that earlier in Nicole's staff report, she listed commercial uses and it had a certain amount of square feet. That's actually the lot square footage. So for the impact report and for what we're proposing, it's much less than that. It's about like a third of those square footages. It's 163,000 non-residential square feet is what we're seeing for that initial phase one. As you can see from US Highway 160 and moving north, the first part of this development that we're conceiving for it is going to be a mix of general commercial, potentially a grocery store. That's going to be probably our first use that we would see getting developed on this site. There are multiple pads for additional general commercial uses, and there has been talk about bringing a hotel into this area. As you go further north, it's going to create higher density residential development. We're thinking about townhomes, potentially a multifamily, multi-unit development. And then as you get into those higher phases, the northern portions of the property, you're seeing more just single family detached housing. Next slide, please. So this slide shows you our conceptual plans phasing. What we're going to start off with is phases 1A and 1B are going to be that mixed use, that general commercial use that's going to align Highway 160. As you go further north, it's going to be that higher density residential use. And then these later phases are going to be the single family detached housing. I'd like to highlight one key part of this development plan is that extending this infrastructure north throughout this site, I mean, this is 153 acres. It's a very large site. So extending the infrastructure is contingent upon getting the infrastructure, water, sewer lines, traffic access completed, but it's also going to be a financial feasibility game. We're going to need to extend this infrastructure far north as we can sell off certain lots. And so this phasing is going to take a very long time. I know that this, as you'll see from our fiscal impact report, this is a massive development. It's going to generate a lot of population. It's going to generate a lot of tax revenue. But I'd like you to keep in mind that this is probably a 10-year horizon. You know, just given the town's absorption rates and given how costly it's going to be to move this infrastructure and create these street networks, bringing in the water lines, the sewer lines, it will take a long time. Phases 1A and 1B we believe should take place within the first 3 years. The remaining phases 2 through 6 will probably take the remaining 7 years to complete. Next slide, please. All right, so I want to get into the nitty-gritty with how your town is broken up residentially. I think you'll find these slides interesting from the standpoint of long-range planning. This pie chart is showing your current residential mix in the town. You can see that Bayfield is about 80% residential, single-family residential. That's the type of housing that Bayfield has a significant amount of. All of those smaller slices show you the different types of housing as according to the La Plata County assessor. All of those types are assessment codes. And as you can see, townhomes are the next biggest group. And then it's very small. You have very little apartment housing. That would be designated by the multi 9+, multi 4 through 8, duplex, triplex. And what we're trying to propose throughout this site, next slide please, is a different residential mix. So the single family residential would only be 61% of all of the residential units that are being conceived at the conceptual level. Townhomes are more in line with what we're seeing throughout the town of Bayfield, but this development could bring in much needed apartments. And given the scale of this development and its location to Highway 160, we believe that that's a feasible use. Next slide, please. This slide is showing your current land uses based upon the county's assessment. The reason I want to bring this up is because assessment equals taxes. Residentially assessed land brings in a much smaller percentage of property tax, well, is assessed at a lower percentage than commercially assessed land. And commercially assessed land would include industrial and vacant land. So you can see that 85% of the town of Bayfield is currently residentially assessed. What that means is that the majority of your property has an assessment ratio of 7.15%, and that's generating your property tax as a town. Commercial assessments are only 6.8%, and that industrial is just moving it right around 7%. That assessment ratio is 29%. It's about 4 times as valuable as a residential property. What we're projecting is 163,000 square feet of new commercial space. The town's existing commercial space for the entirety of the town is only 315,000 square feet. I'd also like you to keep in mind that this new development, and we're seeing this as a pattern all over the county, as you know from construction costs, new development costs significantly more, which means that it has a significantly higher assessment value, which means that even though that 163,000 is about a little over half of what you currently have as square feet, it will generate more in property tax revenue than your existing commercial space. That's what we're projecting in our fiscal impact. So jumping over to that fiscal impact analysis, and I should have said this at the start, if any of these things don't make sense and you want to stop me, please feel free to ask some questions. I know this is a longer presentation. So these are what we're forecasting for the max build-out scenario. What you've seen in that conceptual development plan is essentially that would be when it's complete. Let's say 10 years from now, it's all done. What is that going to do to the town's demographics? Well, the current town population, according to the state demographer, is about 2,800 people. This would bring in 1,395 new residents. That's a 49% increase in the town's current population. We also looked at the school district. And so we looked at households, how many students are being generated per household. And so we project an additional 197 students for the school district. That's a 15% increase from what you currently have in the town of Bayfield. Next slide, please. So these are our fiscal impact projections. The way that we got to these impact projections is that we worked with the county assessor. We looked at current properties and how they're assessed, what they're valued at. We did comparable properties throughout La Plata County to get a sense of a price per square foot, a cost per square foot to build this development, and what it would ultimately be assessed at. So that the key number here is that estimated equalized assessed value, EAV. That's $28,900,000. That would be the Bayfield's East assessed value. That assessed value, that equalized assessed value, is what your mill levies are coming off of. It's what's determining your property taxes. The way that we did this fiscal impact analysis is we broke it up into 2 parts. We looked at the residential that would be coming online over the next 10 years, and we looked at the general commercial. We looked at how that compares to the town currently, and we looked at the town's budgets. So we went through your 2022 budget. We looked at actual budgetary items from 2021 to get a sense of what the town's expenses would be for this full build-out scenario development and what the actual revenues would be. And what we found is that when this development is completed, it's going to generate a surplus for the town annually of $416,000. That's significant because typically when you're doing a fiscal impact analysis, you want to just make sure you're breaking even on a new development. You don't want to see the town providing more expenses than actually getting revenue back. Having $416,000 in surplus revenue would be a boon for the town. And that's because of all of the general commercial sales tax producing uses that are being proposed. Next slide, please. When we break that out, when we're looking at our property tax projections, you can see that even though the residential is the majority of this site, it's almost even in terms of the non-residential property tax, $88,000 compared to $83,000 annually. That's $172,000 annually in property tax. Next slide, please. When we compare that to what the town's currently collecting, in 2021, the town collected $220,000 in property tax. So this would be a 78% increase in your property tax collections. Next slide, please. We also looked at sales tax. So we looked at what Bayfield was generating in sales tax on a per square foot basis, and we used that as our average number for new sales tax producing uses. When we got that new number, currently your town collects $2 million, or in 2021, the town collected $2,135,000 in sales tax. This development would generate just shy of $1 million, $957,000 in annual sales tax collections. So again, that's a 45% increase in terms of your budgetary collections. Next slide, please. I hope that this slide stands out to the Planning Commission because it's arresting. According to your 2021 Town of Bayfield tax revenue, you can see that sales tax commands the lion's share of how the town pays for virtually everything. Now think back to how much of the town is currently residential. The town desperately needs commercial uses. So the way that this fiscal impact looked at town revenues, we're seeing that not only is it creating a surplus of revenue, but it's going to generate a significant increase in sales tax revenue, which pays for your capital improvement plan fund, your streets fund. That revenue is significant for what the town has to do. Next slide, please. Although there's no one from the school district here, I don't think, statutory requirements do say that we have to look at the impacts on the school district. Again, there's about 197 students, 15% increase in current students. We talked to the former superintendent when we were going through this analysis. We talked about these new students. If they were evenly spaced, what would that impact be on the school? The superintendent said that number of students would not trigger any needed capital improvements. However, especially at the middle school level, they thought that might need new hires. So we're assuming that there would be 10 new teaching hires once this development is completed. Next slide, please. When we look at those teaching hires, we did an average of about $60,000 annual salary for those teaching hires. We did that from their salary charts at the Bayfield School District. That's about a $600,000 recurring annual expense. However, the state backfills revenue on a per pupil basis, and Bayfield gets about $9,300 per new student from the state of Colorado. So when you look at that, and you also take into account property taxes and school impact fees, this is a massive net positive for the school district, about $2.5 million. Next slide, please. We also wanted to make a statement about traffic impacts, and I do apologize. I know there's many people in the room that have asked on a number of developments, well, what are the traffic impacts going to be? Well, this is a unique situation in the sense that Colorado's Department of Transportation is asking for a joint traffic impact study with this development and a development to the south that is coming online regarding Bayfield Parkway and US Highway 160. The joint traffic impact study is going to determine whether or not a signalized intersection is necessary. For this development to take place, an intersection will be necessary to serve the development. I also want to highlight, though, that the way that the development is conceived is to create better circulation throughout the entire town. So not only would it connect to US 160 and create an intersection to Bayfield Parkway, but the internal street circulation would connect with the school that's to the west of the property, and eventually have connections that are going east-west with the neighboring neighborhoods. And the idea behind that is, and actually CDOT has been pushing this as well, it would help alleviate traffic throughout the town. Not the entirety of the town wouldn't just have to go on the north side to County Road 501 to get to US 160. This intersection would create a more reasonable traffic circulation, in our opinion. Next slide, please. I also wanted to highlight one other thing, and this goes back to sales tax. The majority of the town's capital improvement program fund and streets fund is derived from sales tax. I believe it's over 80% of all those funds are coming directly from sales tax. So any surface transportation improvements are going to have a boon with this type of development, especially since general commercial sales tax producing uses are going to come online in the early phases. Next slide, please. And so finally, I want to go go back to that comprehensive plan alignment. I hope that the key takeaways from our analysis and proposing this annexation is that this will increase the town's housing stock. It'll help create a more diverse housing options for the town of Bayfield. That it's going to significantly increase your commercial property in the town and your sales tax producing uses. That it will have almost $500,000 annually of surplus revenue at full build out. And that aligns with many of the goals that were outlined in 2018 in your comprehensive plan. So that's all I have for you now. Any questions? I know that was a lot of information, but.
Can we get this emailed to us? Can you send a copy to us?
Sure.
You said there's not gonna be any, the school's not gonna have to have any additional buildings done to it with 197 students added, did that catch that?
That was what the superintendent told us.
Maybe that's why he's former.
He's no longer superintendent.
Just
I'm
saying.
gonna try to avoid jokes for Dr. Ayton. But yeah, again, this is going to be phased in over time.
I get that.
And so it really comes out to, I believe it's roughly, what was it, it was coming out to something like 2 students per grade over a certain number of years. And so the primary concern were teachers. They said that, believe it or not, the Bayfield School District has actually been declining in
Right.
student population for the last decade. And so having 197 new students doesn't get it to its previous population of 2010 even. So that's why I think the facilities are sufficient. The teacher hirings are the problem, because that has ebbed and flowed over time, and so this would require more teachers.
It's, to be realistic, they're gonna have to redo some things. I mean, that's because they're gonna be old.
Yeah.
So, but that includes, that's a good thing too, so that, you go with that.
Mm-hmm. I should state that you do have a copy of this fiscal impact analysis. It's not really light reading, but the idea behind it is it's just direct impacts.
Right.
So it's not looking at construction of
And
this
I get that.
development
I
and
just
new
was
jobs. It's just
wondering
direct
if I had
impacts.
heard that correctly.
Yes, you're right.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board?
I guess real quick, when you're looking at the town's budgets for improvements and road plowing and all that and factoring that in, you're factoring in the increase in the amount of roads and utilities and all that, and what percentage that cost is gonna increase, and
Yeah.
factoring that into your analysis?
So absolutely, that's a really good question. So we actually separated street impacts from our analysis because that is a concern, and it's street impacts. Although this analysis is usually based on new people, right? They call it per capita.
Right.
So new people come in. Every resident of Bayfield has a certain amount of dollars associated to them for town expenses and a certain amount of revenue, right? When it comes to streets, that doesn't really work, right? Because you want to look at what is the total street total of the town? What are your costs as a town to maintain those streets, improve those streets? So that's what we looked at. We looked at the total linear miles or linear feet, but we looked at road miles of the town of Bayfield. We looked at how many new road miles this would generate, and it does create a deficit. The deficit was about $50,000 just for streets. But when you factor in the other revenues with the sales tax, with the property tax, that's where you get that net surplus of $416,000.
I did have another question for you. So your first phase is down here by the, how are you getting into it? I didn't catch where you're going in.
Well, that north arrow is kind of blocking it, but that southwest corner is very close to where Bayfield Parkway connects with US Highway 160.
Okay.
So the main source of access is going back to that idea of the intersection, having that be another point. There may be an additional access point further to the east on the corner, but long term, that's not how we're looking at access. We're trying to get the main access be that intersection from US Highway 160 and Bayfield Parkway.
And then my other question is, your phase 6 is way up there. Where is that coming in? Is that up at Wilmer Farms? Is that not Wilmer Farms, Dove Ranch?
Oh, to access those
Uh-huh.
other lots, could you
No,
go
Dove
one
Ranch
slide
is
up?
up
I
here.
think the phasing might be a,
Is that where it comes right through here?
yes. So maybe that gives you a better idea of the internal street network.
Tamarack.
So I'm saying it's right here. What is that street that comes right there?
I'm sorry, I'm not following you.
Your top corner, your top
Left.
Oh, okay. The one that's coming off of Dove Ranch?
Yes.
It's Mesquite.
Well, Mesquite is just below there. And then, of course, the Ranch Road, but everything's
I think the thing to keep in mind is that as this development progresses, the main access point's US Highway 160.
Right.
And it would then we would be extending that infrastructure north through the development, and more of these developments, these lots would come online.
And is that, you're working with CDOT to try to get that going, correct?
Yes.
And so you're saying that that's gonna come in so that, I'm looking at, we talked about just having, let me rearrange my words, how you're going to access fire and ambulance and everything else like that. How is that phase going to be accessed? You have to have several.
Phil, do you want to speak to that?
I just want to make sure I'm on top of what you're saying.
So, Philip Brenhack, 934 Main Avenue, Durango. We'll work with the fire department on it, but typically it's roughly, I think, about 26 units that you can have on a dead end, and so we're proposing less than 26 on that cul-de-sac
Okay.
for phase 6.
And, okay, so you have, what I'm saying is, on that northeast corner then, that dead end, but you still have those areas coming in.
You either have to go through the entire
So-
subdivision to get
Yes.
around to the end,
That's what
or
I'm
you
worried.
come in through
Yeah.
Dove Ranch.
Two points here, and it loops around, so there's multiple points to any,
All right.
multiple access routes from any one point.
On the upper left, not the cul-de-sac there, but that one artery that kind of dead ends, where will that attach to?
This one?
Yeah,
Dove Ranch, if that road gets extended.
okay.
I guess, we planned extensions to neighboring properties, where we thought we could to allow room for Bayfield to grow north and east.
And is this at the bottom of the green section, basically, is that road, is that Mountain View as it comes in?
Oh, no.
It's East Oak.
East.
East Oak, okay.
And Andy, I know all this is in the packet. I just liked your cliff notes and your pie charts. That's why I was asking for that. Yeah.
And thank you. I'm just running off some of the ideas. I'm such a visual learner.
How far have you gotten into it as far as infrastructure and build out beyond this, I guess further into town, closer to the water treatment plant, sewer and all that? Does the existing infrastructure have capacity to take on this much more flow without building it all the way out to
Yeah, so along
Buck Highway or somewhere?
Along the southwest, running from the intersection with CEDA up to the school is, I believe, a 16-inch water line, right there. And then there's already, I think on the slide Andy had, there's stubbed out lines, kind of periodically along the western. So we assume that's sufficient, and then the tanks are all to the north of the property.
What about sewer?
So sewer, I think likely will need a lift station at the southeast corner for the entire project, which will then pump along the highway and tie into the west by Bayfield Center.
I'd like to add something to that.
Yeah.
So we did calculate revenues that would be generated that on a non-recurring basis, so such as plan investment fees and impact fees. And it's a significant number of plan investment fees and impact fees moving forward. We're looking at a total of, for sewer, 3.2 million plant investment fees, and water would be 3.5 million. However, those plan investment fees would be paid for by the users when they connect with those sewer lines. So although it wasn't the sewer and water lines, although that wasn't the focus of the impact report, just know that there's going to be significant revenue as this comes online, going back to your town's plant investment fees for both services.
So as individual lots are sold, that's when those plan investment fees are paid. What about the initial cost to get the lift station and that infrastructure connected? Is there a greater upfront cost that the developer would pay for that plan investment fee just to get that started?
Well, we're probably going to discuss this more at the Board of Trustees meeting in regards to the annexation agreement. But all on-site improvements, all improvements within the site, are the responsibility of the developer. Off-site improvements, such as the intersection, for example, may be something that is going to be paid for in a public-private partnership. So the developer would be incurring costs, but there's other developments that could be served by those infrastructure improvements, and some of those infrastructure improvements are going to have an overall benefit to the town, such as traffic improvements with that intersection. So that's a ongoing negotiation.
Any other questions? Thank you, guys. What's that? Okay. Does anybody have public input on this?
Brian Blanchard, 627 Louisiana Drive. Just quickly, it's early on in the process here, so my question for the developers would be, over time, they've cut back on the commercial part of this project and increased the residential part of the project. That's good for the developers, but I think your money, as you know, is in the commercial end of this. It's not in the residential end. 7% as opposed to 29% is a huge difference. So my point is, I would encourage you to encourage the developers to increase that commercial a little bit. You're looking at, 1,500 people coming into town over time. They're going to need services. And if you don't grab that space now, you're not going to get it later. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Kat Katzos, 525 Dev Ranch Road. I understand that the developer spent most of the evening talking about the fiscal impacts, both positive and negative. But I think something to go back to the development. I don't see, and maybe you can point this out to me, but new smart growth practices do not make the land conform to the development. The development conforms to the land. So one of the big issues that you hear people talking about is drainage. So how is this development taking into consideration the natural conformity of the land? And how is this development designed to conform to the land and not have those negative impacts? Typically, developments come in, slice and dice, try to level out the land, change it up, and thus you have Dove Ranch Road. So, and then also understanding what the soil impacts are. So I would ask you to look at that, consider that, maybe look at smart growth practices and how this development fits into that guidelines presented by the Association of Planning of American Planners. So I would say that. I'm not opposed to a development like this. I think our town needs this, needs to create affordable housing, more housing, I understand that. I also understand the need for commercial. But is this development designed well? Is it designed well? Does it start out right? Or are we going to piecemeal this correctly? And I'm not sure if I understood correctly, and again, maybe you can answer this, but it doesn't sound like the lineup between the Bayfield Parkway and the entrance into this project match. It sounds like there's a jut, so it's like it comes in on the southwest corner, but if you've got a stoplight there to move traffic, does it align, or is it kind of funky? So I want that question answered. And then again, we know from living here for many years how difficult it is to get across the 160, and they keep saying, well, the traffic, patterns and the speed limits will affect that. No, it won't. This is a major highway running through our town. And to create connectivity to the north and the south, and if there's a grocery store going in there, you got kids that are wanting to get across this street. So it's going to slow some cars down, but not really, not when they're hauling buns, because they're coming in on what appears to be, a rural highway, to get them to slow down so kids can get across. This is going to be a major center for our community. So how is it safe to cross that road? Foot traffic, we should be encouraging foot traffic, bike traffic, all of that, moving forward. So there's just some beginning flaws here that I see that I'm wondering can be addressed. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Would you like to address those?
Thank you for your questions. Following my comment, I'm going to have Phil come up to speak specifically to the intersection questions and traffic. I did want to go back to the comment about commercial and something that I honestly didn't bring up in the presentation, which is the initial zoning of this development. We're proposing a planned development, a PUD zone throughout the area. Because of its size and because of how long this phasing is going to be, we're going to need a unique zoning for it, to allow maximum flexibility as we go through. So depending on the market conditions, commercial could continue to expand. I do want to say, though, that in terms of designing with the land, that's a really great point. When we did our conceptual development, our team walked the whole site, including our landscape architect. And so they had in mind the elevation changes and how that's going to change not only with the cost of the infrastructure, but the lot sizes. And as you can see, you have higher density lot sizes on the flatter portions of this development. And as you get higher, where the views are, amazing up there, and you're getting into the pinion growth, those lots are progressively getting a little bit larger. So it's all going to be contingent on how quickly absorption happens and how much we can extend that infrastructure. But I can tell you that the conceptual design for this was to design with the land. With that, I'll let Phil come up to talk about traffic impacts and drainage a little bit more.
Thank you.
Yep. So like Andy said, we could have fit a lot more lots on this if we just went with a straight grid layout. But the reason the roads are where they are is because that's kind of where the natural topography kind of met, road grades that work with the town of Bayfield's code. So, that's why they kind of curve around and are where they are. And the open space we're showing kind of works with the natural drainages. And we haven't sized the ponds completely yet, but we are showing 4 ponds throughout the site. They're in natural drainages. They'll be designed to the town of Bayfield's standards, where we won't release any higher than existing conditions allow. That's standard drainage design practices. I know people were not a big fan of the ponds, but that is, I guess, industry standard, and so that's typically what's accepted, and that's what we're proposing. So I can't speak to downstream drainage concerns, but we will not do anything to impact downstream drainage. As far as the intersection, there's already been right-of-way dedicated by this project and the property to the west, and it does align with Bayfield Parkway to the south. You know, there's right-of-way on both sides. I believe it's 80 foot each direction, so it's pretty wide right-of-way, 160 feet, which is, you know, very wide. And that's going up to the north all the way to the school site. So, and then as far as safety and crossing the highway, so we think a traffic signal is likely going to be required there, and you know, we're working with CDOT to kind of determine that and determine the phasing of when that might need to be built. But you know, that will significantly improve safety crossing the intersection. And then additionally, we've had discussions with CDOT about reducing the speed limit along the highway there. Currently it's 55 miles an hour, and we're proposing to reduce it to 45 miles an hour, which will, you know, slow traffic down, allow easier turning movements and crossing of the highway.
So wouldn't you have to have the traffic signal in first before the development can start moving forward to have your accesses in there? So
Not necessarily the signal. There will likely be improvements to the intersection, turn lanes and stuff, and that will,
But that
that
kind
will
of
be required
defeats.
at the beginning, but the signal might not be required till there's a higher volume of traffic later on.
Any other questions?
My name's Derek McCoy. I live here in Bayfield, P.O. Box 1310. Talk about the intersection. I think we went through some of this last time we were here, and we talked about the effort to break the A line through CDOT with the cooperation with the town. The town is actually going to be heavily involved in going forward with the intersection. It's something that has to happen for this project to happen. Along with the intersection itself, CDOT's going to tell us, based on the traffic study that's really underway right now, that's taking place, and it's a cooperative effort of other projects working on it. But CDOT will tell us what the design of that intersection has to be, the length of the lanes, the speed limits. Believe it or not, CDOT doesn't want to slow traffic through here, so we're really fighting hard for that. So signalization is something that we think is going to happen, and we think should happen sooner rather than later, and probably in the initial construction of the intersection. That's something that I think we all want to see. So if our project, if the project, Bayfield East project, has anything to do with it, we will lobby on the side of signalization early, because we think it's a safety issue. That intersection's been in the works for a long time. The EIS from CDOT, dating back some 20 plus years ago, identified prospective access points along the highway, and that EIS identified this intersection as a needed intersection on Highway 160. So that's been in the works a long time. It's been 20 plus years that they've identified that intersection. And then the effort to break the A line with CDOT that's been granted. Actually, the town was a recipient of that. CDOT made sure that the intersection lined up, that the necessary right-of-way was dedicated, and that there was the potential for east-west connectivity, whether it be Colorado, East Oak, Mesquite, and then one day maybe Dove Ranch. And then the conceptual plan, I'd like to say, is just that. It's really subject to change based on the market, based on the project viability, based on what we get into when more engineering starts to happen. So there could be a lot of changes to that, but under the PUD plan and the idea that we're going to phase it in smaller phases, the town will have ample opportunity to review that design and make sure that it meets town standards. And then the same to speak to water and sewer. I think you might have been talking about, facility capacity. I think that each respective phase will have to prove that there's capacity in the sewer treatment plant, in the water delivery system before it can go forward. That'll be back in front of you guys at each respective phase. The phases are, just to give you an idea, really smaller than what you're looking at today with like Mustang Crossing. I think it's 85 lots. I think the phases that we've identified, and they're really subject to change too based on the market, you know, and a lot of things. But they're going to be from 40 lots, maybe upwards of 70 lots for each respective phase. So we might have a phase that's really small that we have to go through all the hoops for, and then another phase it might be a little bit bigger. So we just don't know what those phases are going to be, other than what we've conceptually put together. And you know, there's a lot of work that's gone into this conceptual plan, just like Philip said about the topography and the street layout and all of those things. So any questions of me, I'll be willing to answer them.
Any questions?
Time frame wise, what's kind of the goal or the idea of when this starts moving forward in your perfect world, I guess?
Well, we would love to be hard at work the spring of 2023, but we know that CDOT's in charge of the process around the intersection, and so that's a key component to our scheduling, is how we maneuver CDOT's requirements. We're just going to keep working. We've been working on it a long time, honestly, already.
Sure.
Oh, and I was going to say one other thing about the irrigation ditches. We're completely fine with the condition that talks about the Los Pinos, and if you guys want to add the verbiage Schroeder into that condition, that's fine with us too.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
All right, moving on to the action agenda. 3A, approval of February 8, 2022 minutes.
I make a motion we approve the minutes of February 8th, 2022.
A second.
I hear a second. Roll call, please.
Vice Chairperson Gadd,
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Shea Heidinger,
Yes.
Trustee Politis,
Yes.
Mayor Tarkington,
Yes.
Chairperson Nyberg,
Yes.
all in favor.
Thank you, ma'am. Moving on to 3B, 2022-03, Marlin Village PUD sketch plan. I'd entertain a motion.
Did you
I don't think
want
we
us
did
to
any-
find
I know.
the page with the,
We're on page 22, go back to 22.
22.
Yeah, and then in your packet.
No, I'm on 22
No,
now.
you're right, but I'm just wondering, we don't have
Oh.
any hangups on the findings or conditions on that one. It's been a long night already, but I was just trying to go through.
Yeah.
I think we addressed the
Everything.
questions and.
It's a huge packet.
Then I would make a motion to approve the Marlin Village PUD sketch plan with the findings stated in alternative action A. Findings and conditions.
I'll second.
I hear a second. Roll call, please.
Vice Chairperson Gadd,
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Shea Heidinger,
Yes.
Trustee Politis,
Yes.
Mayor Tarkington,
Yes.
Chairperson Nyberg,
Yes.
all in favor.
Thank you, ma'am.
Holy moly. Hold on. This is a huge packet.
I know.
Next month we'll go for 500 pages.
So we'll move on to action agenda C, 2022-1, Orchard PUD preliminary plan.
can you just direct me to the page of the findings?
It's on 80.
80?
Yep.
I don't have the right page numbers now. So we're not budging on sidewalks.
Sidewalks.
Mm-hmm.
They're all separate though.
This is orchard, this is what we're doing now?
The orchard, yeah.
Yep. Anything with the drainage?
No, I think that was addressed in the answers. I felt comfortable with that. There was a question on lighting, but I think that is for future reviews as well.
True.
Traffic, I was comfortable with that. And I think, when we talked about setbacks, I mean, I think that's something, like you said, if those 8 feet between structures,
They're proposing, smaller setbacks, mainly the side setbacks. I know there was some concern about that, but I think, it's a 1 acre site, and it's a different housing type than what we've seen in
Right.
Bayfield, and if somebody wants a larger home, they're gonna
They
have
go
other
somewhere,
options,
right.
Mustang Village, so this will be, there's gonna be certain,
yeah, I mean, they're gonna be aware of,
housing type.
right. If you don't like it, I guess you can.
Well, and I guess my one question would be, I hate variances, and so,
It's not a variance.
well, I understand that, but to make sure that we ran into that problem in Clover Meadows Phase 7 where they built a little too close and had to come in and ask for a variance, making sure that, we're upholding that in the same subdivision.
Goes back to the importance of that PUD guide.
Okay,
We have more sets of eyes on it now.
awesome. All right, I would entertain a motion.
I'd make a motion to recommend to approve the Orchard PUD preliminary plan with the findings and conditions as listed in staff report.
I'll second.
I hear a second. Can I have a roll call, please?
Vice Chairperson Gadd,
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Shea Heidinger,
Yes.
Trustee Politis,
Yes.
Mayor Tarkington,
Yes.
Chairperson Nyberg,
Yes.
all in favor.
Thank you, ma'am.
189.
I was like before. We'll move on to action agenda 3D 2021-12 Bayfield East annexation.
Okay. Yeah, I think we need to, I'd like to investigate that Schroeder ditch comment. I would add it to the
Conditions.
conditions.
Maybe amend condition D to include those penis and Schroeder ditch.
Lateral C.
Necessary.
Is that lateral C?
Lateral C, yeah, Schroeder lateral C is what I have in my notes.
Can you grab right here when you get?
There's gonna be pipe too.
Yeah. So,
Because you went all the way back up, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm wondering if the first, no, the third.
I mean, we'll just investigate it, but I would just,
All right, I would entertain a motion on the Bayfield East annexation.
I would make a motion to approve the Bayfield East annexation and initial zoning with the findings and conditions as stated, to include investigating the Schroeder lateral C in alternative action A.
I'll second that.
Roll call, please.
Vice Chairperson Gadd,
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Shea Heidinger,
Yes.
Trustee Politis,
Yes.
Mayor Tarkington,
Yes.
Chairperson Nyberg,
Yes.
all in favor.
Thank you, ma'am. Moving on to number 4, discussion and adjourn. What we'll do, community development update.
Yeah, so Bayfield recently was asked to be a part of the Wells Group forecast, so they're going to be highlighting some of the things going on in Bayfield. That will be on March 14th. It's virtual, so you can go to the Wells Group YouTube page. I did send the planning commissioners a link to that information. But as I was putting together that information, I thought it would be beneficial to put together just a handout for the Planning Commission and the Board of Trustees on some of the statistics currently in Bayfield. So I just wanted to go through that real quickly with you all, because I know you've been here a while. But according to the 2020 state demographer, we currently have a population of 2,839 people. We have 1,114 total housing units, and we have a household size of 2.69 people. We have the largest household size in all of La Plata County, so what that tells me is we have a lot of families in Bayfield compared to other areas and communities in La Plata County. We also have a vacancy rate of 5.83%, which is the lowest vacancy rate in La Plata County. And that again tells me that most of our units are lived in and they're not empty second homes or vacation rentals in our community. According to the 2020 census information, we have a median household income of $62,285. Our median gross monthly rent is $1,024. And we have an 82.7% home ownership rate, which is pretty high. We also have an employment, not unemployment, but an employment rate of 70.8%. And our average commute time for our residents is 23.9 minutes. So again, that's telling me a lot of people do commute out of the community for work. And then working with Bob Allen, he provided me some MLS information from 2021. So as of December 2021, we had 5 homes on the market. In total 2021, we had 78 homes sold in Bayfield. Our median home price for 2021 was $385,000, but as of February 24th, it was already at $395,000. So it's already gone up $10,000 from December to February. And then also just including all the different larger projects that are going on right now in the community. Right now we have approximately 221.56 acres being annexed into the town as of this moment, because I have another discussion on annexation coming up soon. Approximately 462 single-family lots, 209 multifamily lots, 30 deed restricted units, and 15 townhome space, or 15 tiny home spaces. So a lot going on in the community. And then the last page just kind of walks through a work plan that I have in place for 2022 coming into this new position and some of the things that we are proposing to accomplish. I probably will not provide one of these every month, but I do, sorry, Mayor.
Nice.
But I will put together, as we have changes in data that I can share with you, as well as new projects coming through, or I'll update this often. So probably a couple times in the next couple months, I'll provide updates to you. And that is all I have. If you have questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
No, thank you for that.
Thank you.
I really appreciate this. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I second. That's in the speedy building.
No roll
Right.
call on the adjournment?
No, we're okay.
No, not this time.
We all said aye.
Anybody abstain? Yeah. From there.
Yeah.